Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Visual Contract Year-End Webinar. Just to let everybody know that this is being recorded, so then we will put up the recording on our website probably by Monday, by the time it gets converted and then posted. So then you guys can review this at any time that you need to. There's a large amount of people, so we are not going to be taking any questions during the webinar. If you have questions, please email support@jobcost.com after the webinar is complete. If anybody has a problem hearing me, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, you should all be able to see my screen. I have on one side, I have a visual contract demo company open. And on the other side, I will have several documents that I'm going to be showing you today. So the first thing, you all should have received an email from us notifying you that there is a visual contract update available. Updates are free to customers with support contracts. If you have not been notified of that, or you're not aware of that, there is an update for tax forms that are going to be used during the course of this year for year end. Somebody is not muted. I can hear somebody.
What? It's not me though.
Everybody please mute themselves. Everybody please mute themselves.
There we go.
Somebody is not muted. Please mute yourselves. There we go. Oh, Lynn, you need to mute yourself.
I'm trying. It won't let me.
Connected in twice somehow. There.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay, nobody needs to talk during this webinar. We're not taking questions. This is strictly for you guys to listen and hear. So if you guys could please mute yourselves. Everybody should be muted, please. Somebody is still not muted. I can't mute it. Okay, this person's not muted. Joanne, you're not muted. I'm muting you. Okay. We will continue on with this. Everybody should be able to see my screen. So the update that we sent out an email blast letting you know that there was an update available. If you did not receive this update, please contact support@jobcost.com to notify us that you need the update. The update is for the revised 1099 forms. The NEC form, which you'll see on the right-hand side of my computer here, has been revised for this year. It is now in 3 parts, where last year it was a 2-part form. So the form is basically the same, except they made it in 3 parts. They kind of just squished all the pieces down into make 3 parts. So this is a new change from last year, where it was a 2-part form. The other change that was made was in the 1099 miscellaneous form. They have kept that a 2-part form, but they added box 11, which is fish purchased for resale. Box 11 was not on the form last year. Box 11 was blanked out. So these 2 forms, if you use them, you will need an update, a visual contract update. Also, if you file 1095s electronically, you will need a visual contract update for that purpose as well. So every year, we ask that you review your W-2s, and I'm going to revert back to the letter that we sent. So now, if you guys did not receive this letter, it is available on our website. You can go to www.jobcost.com, and under News, you will see the year-end instructions letter for 2021. We ask every year that you review what you had to do last year for any special earnings, any group term life insurance, sick pay, automobile usage. And this year, you'd have to also include COVID-19 wages. If you paid any COVID-19 wages to employees, you have to show that on your W-2s. If you have 250 more W-2 forms, you are required by the government to report the cost of employer-sponsored health coverage on the W-2 and electronic filing. If you're not sure, you can always contact your accountant, and he can let you know. And if you are required, we have instructions in this year-end letter letting you know how to do that. So we recommend, and we're getting close to the last payroll week of the year. Next week is probably most of yours last payroll week for the year. So we suggest that you enter the time cards, or you need to enter the time cards for your special items by next week. So if you have the group term life, auto usage, taxable third-party sick pay, which you'll get from your insurance company, they may send you a form or a letter showing you what they've paid out to any third-party wages that they paid on your behalf for workers' comp. You need to enter that onto the employee's 2021 payroll, even if he didn't work for you this year because he was hurt. You still need to enter the wages he earned for the third-party sick pay to show on his W-2. So that includes the COVID-19 wages that you may have paid to people who are out sick with COVID-19. Now, the third-party sick pay, we can give you instructions on how to do that if you have information on that from your accountants, but they do need to get in before or by next week at the latest. The COVID-19 sick pay wages, where there are instructions on page 3 of this document that we will review in a few minutes. So completing your last payroll of the calendar year, the government requires that you report your earnings based on the check date. So if your last payroll week ending date or your last payroll check date has to be in 2021. So if you pay on Saturday, your week ends on Saturday, and you date your checks on Thursday, For this year, your last week ending date would be December 25th with a pay date of December 30th. If you pay on Friday, then it would be a pay date of December 31st. But you cannot have a pay date dated 2022 and have it in 2021. That is not allowed. And our system will not allow you to do that either. It will stop you. The check date must be in the correct check year. So there is a calendar year-end checklist that we provide in this document as well, that you need to follow the steps for payroll, to print quarterly reports, year-end reports, zero your employee files, and change your payroll tax tables. Now, we do not have the payroll tax tables yet. There is a draft version that has been released, but it does not have any tax changes on it yet. It's just showing you the Social Security amounts, the Social Security limit that has been revised for this year. So as soon as we get those, we check that every day. And as soon as we find that they have been released, we will update our document and email it out to everybody. If your fiscal year also ends on December 31st, you must complete the fiscal year-end checklist, which is also attached. The checklist includes procedures for closing other modules for the year, but you only have to do payroll right now. You can wait and do the other modules like AP and AR and GL when you're ready to close that module for December. And it must be done before you close the module for January. So after you have completed your last payroll of the year, completed your calendar year-end checklist, completed your fiscal year-end checklist if your fiscal year ends December 31st, updated your tax tables, then you can proceed with your first payroll for the year. You cannot skip any of these steps because then that will cause a problem. That could cause you to have wages posted, this year's 2022 wages posted into 2021 earnings. So if you say, oh, I'm just going to run payroll for 2022 because I need to get it out, I'm in a time crunch, I can't get it done in time, I can't get I can't close out before I get this next payroll done, it doesn't work. You can't do that. You can enter time cards, but you cannot print checks. Because if you do that, then the checks will go into 2021 and not 2022. 1095, 1094, 1095C form reporting is also part of your year-end steps. You need to check with your accountant to determine if you are required to file that. If you are required to file that, you have to have it to the employees this year by March 2nd, which would be the paper forms, and then to the IRS by February 28th. We do have an import that you can do into our system through an Excel sheet, or you can manually enter them into VC. And to manually enter them, you would be working with the history file. So you would need to do this after you've closed out the year and zeroed out the employee file. So under File, Payroll, Employee History, you would have a history file here that says 2021. You would say OK. And on your employees year-to-date totals tab, here is the section for the 1095s. If you check that he prints a 1095, you can put in your offer code. And if you put in like 1C here, it will go all the way across and for every month, or whatever your offer code happens to be. Or you can pick and choose which month you would want to put in. Same with the amount. You can put amount in whatever months he happened to be working. Maybe he only worked in May, June, and July. You could do that. You can pick and choose, or you put it in the all 12 month, it'll fill in 3 fields for all 12 months. The Excel sheet import file is something that some of you have used before. That's a document that we can send over to you and instruct you on how to use it if you need to import a large number of 1095 information. That import is done through File, Payroll, Import 1095C. And then it goes out and looks for an Excel sheet that you've done your work in and imports it into those fields. You do need, if you are new to electronic filing for 1094, 1095, you do need to apply for an Affordable Care Act application transmitter code, control code. They call it a TCC number. Everybody needs that. You can Google that or ask your accountant on how you should or how you could apply for that if you need to. The state of Illinois requires that you file W-2s electronically. They started this last year. You can no longer send paper forms to them. You must file electronically. We have 3 links here. One is a registration link if you're not already registered, which everybody should be from last year. The transmission upload link. And then they send you they give you an acknowledgement link where you have to go on a separate link to get your acknowledgement that they accepted it. That usually takes 12 to 24 hours, as far as I know. And that's what it was last year. And then this is a helpful link about their electronic services for the Illinois Department of Revenue. If you have to show COVID wages on the W-2, the COVID Act, or the COVID Tax Relief Act, ended on September 30th of this year. So that means that you can no longer take the tax breaks that you were getting from paying your employees COVID wages. To put them on the time card so they show on the W-2, you need to have a list of your employees that you paid out COVID wages. We instructed you to enter your time cards with the letters FFCRA in the miscellaneous field. We have crystal reports that we created that will run a time card edit for just wages that have the FFCRA in the miscellaneous field. So then you can get a list of employees that you paid COVID wages to for the year. If you need that crystal report, you can contact support and we'll be happy to install it for you and help you get it running. Now, if you forgot to code your time cards with FFCRA, that's not a problem either. We can easily go behind the scenes and change the miscellaneous code field to read FFCRA as long as you tell us which time cards need to have that done. So in the payroll deduction file, you need to have a deduction set up for FFCRA. This is a screenshot of how the deduction would look. It does have to have a GL account ID on it because it's a deduction, and deductions always need to have an account ID in order to show up on the employees page. So that is under admin, payroll, deductions, add-ons, fringes, and taxes. And I did not set one up. I should have, but it would look like this deduction here. The next step would go and put it on your employee file. File payroll employees. Under deductions, you would hit the plus key up here and enter the FFCRA deduction. When the deduction is set up on the employee file, you would go in to the amount column and enter the amount of the wages that were paid to the employee. The gross wages, not the net. You would also enter the same in the maximum column. The year-to-dates and the accumulated will stay at 0. So the deduction would look like this on the employee file. In admin or in file payroll time cards, you would enter a non-taxable time card with the day of the week of N. You could enter the dates of your COVID pay. What time frame was he off? What time frame did you pay him for? And then it's a non-tax amount, which is equal to the amount that you set up on the deduction. There's no union, no job, no phase. And you can use just the miscellaneous GL account number. Once that is entered, you would calculate payroll checks. You would uncheck the calculate 401k, calculate section 125. So in calculate checks, there's options check boxes here to calculate taxes, 401k, 125, all other deductions. You would want to create paper checks only if you use our direct deposit system. If you do not use direct deposit through us, this option for create paper checks only will be grayed out. You will not see that option to uncheck. The instructions say to uncheck it, but we do not. Some people have noticed if they didn't use direct deposit that this was grayed out. When you click OK, it is going to calculate checks for you, and it may give you a message that says there are $0 checks. After you've calculated, you would go into File Payroll Review Void Checks and use the binoculars to find the T checks. Now, you most likely will have to manually add this deduction in. For some reason, it does not add itself in. So when you click Add Deductions button, you would be able to pick the FFCRA from a list here. It would populate in here, and it would most likely populate for a $0 amount. You will have to manually enter in the $1,000 or wherever the amount is. Which would then make your net pay of your check 0. And that is what you want to do. Once you got the net pay to 0, you can save this. And then you would go into print checks. You would print checks to paper using a fake check number. We always recommend that you use the date, whatever date it is that you're running it on. You can do this with your regular payroll checks. You would do these first, separate from your regular payroll, or after you've already completed your regular payroll, but before you've closed it. So they either have to be first or last. Here is the calendar year-end checklist. Gives you step-by-step instructions on how to print your fourth quarter reports, how to print your year-end reports, telling you that the 1095 form should be done later using the employee history file, because you're not going to have it in the current file that you're working off of. It's going to be in the history file. So you'd want to skip that step. So under reports, payroll, year end, you have electronic filing or 1095 forms at the bottom here. You don't want to do those yet. You want to wait until sometime in January and do those. Same with your W-2 forms. Those can also be run off the history file and your electronic filing. So you don't have to do those steps prior to closing out the year and running your next payroll. We have calendar year-to-date reports. The 401k deduction report, miscellaneous deduction reports, which will also show you your FFCRA. So on the miscellaneous deduction report, you could run a report for the year of 2021, your first period date and your ending period date, your deduction of FFCRA, and that will give you a list of all the employees who have that deduction and what amounts that they have in there. So you can see this way what you've entered so far if you're unsure if you've entered anything. After you've got all of your reports, and you can run these reports to PDF so you can view them later. You can also rerun these reports after you've closed out the year by simply using the history file when you run them. So for example, my quarterly reports, I could run it for my current year, or I could say that I want to run it for last year just by choosing a different year on my first line here. And then I could choose to run my fourth quarter again if I want to. And then I have to remember what my Social Security limit was for the prior year. So I'd have to look that up or find that, and we do have that in this letter, and enter that. And then I could run it for the prior year's information. That is true on all of our quarterly reports. You can rerun them. The FUTA report, I could run it for a prior year and a prior quarter. Once you've completed all the reports, you back up in the year end and zero the calendar year to date employee totals. That is done under admin, payroll, year end, and this first step here. So this also, it backs up the year end, zeros year to dates, and clears the 1095-C information from the current year's file. So if you had information in there for 2021, it will go to the history file. But the 2022 file will not have anything in it. This step is a step that cannot be undone. So you have to make sure that you are really ready and you put everything in for 2021 that needs to be in. All the special earnings, all the FFCRA wages. You can't go back once this step is run. And the last step before you can do your first payroll of 2022 would be to make changes to your federal tax tables. That is under admin, payroll, tax tables, federal. Now I have changed some of these. This is the new Social Security limit for 2022. The limit was 142,800, and now it's jumped up to 147. The percentages remain the same as always. The additional Medicare remains the same. Federal unemployment remains the same. 401k limits have gone up. They have increased by $1,000. And the over 50 limit has increased by $1,000 as well. This is all information that we already know and we are sure of and has been published. The tax tables here are still the ones that we're currently using for 2021. These have not been updated yet. Like I said, we check this daily, and we will let you know as soon as we know. The head of household is still in use as far as we know, based on the new W-4 that they have people filling out. So we will have 3 tables to update: the single, the married, and the head of household. To update your state tax tables, it's under the state and local. Now in here we have many different states because we have customers that work in multiple states. So you have to use your binoculars and find Illinois or Indiana or whatever state you happen to be in. The state unemployment percentages and limits. You will get a notice from if you're in Illinois, the IDES, Illinois Department of Employment Security, or whatever state you live in, their Department of Employment Security should send you out a notification of what your percentages are for unemployment for the year of 2022. When you get that, you want to, and when you're ready to start 2022, you want to use that information to update these tables on the correct state here, along with the gross limit, if that's changed at all. That usually doesn't change. For Illinois, the tax rate's been the same for the last several years. Again, we're checking this daily, and we will let you know when we find out if it's been changed or not. It's been the same percentage for single and married. Now for other states, those of you that work in Indiana, we don't have that information and don't normally get those tax changes sent to us by anybody. So we can help you find them on the internet, but typically, you need to work with the state of Indiana, figure out when they change their tax tables and if they made changes this year. Also on the year-end checklist, after you've done your tax tables, you have your accounts payable, accounts receivable, job cost, and general ledger things. These can be done sometime in January or February when you're ready to close December for those modules. So once you hit step 7 and you make your changes to your federal and state tax tables, you are done with the calendar year-end checklist for the time being. If it's your fiscal year-end, you must do the fiscal year-end checklist, which again is reports that you can print. The fiscal year reports are under fiscal year to date, calendar or under calendar year to date. And then you've got your year-end reports that you also run as part of the calendar year-end. Same with the 0 step. It's an admin payroll year-end, 0 employees fiscal year totals. Now, if your fiscal year does not end in December 31st, you must do this step at the time that your fiscal year does end. So if your fiscal year ends in September 30th, you should do this checklist prior to doing your first payroll for October and after you've done your last payroll for September, or whenever your fiscal year ends. You do this after you run your last payroll for the fiscal year and before you do your first. Now in the employee file, under year-to-date totals, we have calendar totals here and fiscal totals here. If your calendar totals, if your fiscal year is the same as your calendar year, these numbers should be the same. And they should both get zeroed out. If your fiscal year is another day besides your calendar year date, then these totals will not be the same, and they will be different. But if you forget to zero your fiscal year totals, they'll continue to add up here, and then the fiscal totals won't be accurate if you forget to zero. Now, if you say your fiscal year ends in September and you're halfway through October and you forgot to zero the fiscal year totals, which happens, you can unpost all of the payroll for October back to your fiscal year date and then run the zero step and then post them back in. And that would correct these fiscal totals. The employer-sponsored health coverage that you're going to need to report on the W-2, if you need to report it on the W-2 as a special earnings. These are the instructions. The instructions are, this is to record the amount per pay period if you want to do it as you go along throughout the year. And every pay period you want to record this cost. If you're going to do it at a one-time entry at the end of the year, which is most common, this is how you would do it for that. You would enter, most of you probably already have a clearing account or some kind of miscellaneous account in your GL that you can use. Again, you would enter a deduction in admin payroll deductions. If you've done this in the past, you probably already have a deduction for the cost of employer-sponsored health coverage. This tells you what box to put on for W-2, which is here and here. And then it tells you to use the clearing or miscellaneous account for general ledger. You also have to make sure that your clearing account shows on the debit table, which is admin, payroll, debit accounts, because you need to make sure you can use it on a time card. And the only GL accounts you can use on a time card are the ones that exist in this debit table. You also have to put in the appropriate tax accounts or where your taxes are going to go to when you're posting. Again, you would enter the deduction on the employee file after the deduction has been entered here. Just like in the FFCRA deduction, you would have an employee health insurance deduction. I can add it here. I can say an F12. I can go down to employee-sponsored health coverage. My type is going to be an amount. My frequency is going to be every. And then my amount is going to be the rate that I want to show on the W-2 form. So let's say it's 1,500 and my maximum is going to be 1,500. Accumulated is 0. Year to date is 0. And that's the deduction that's going to be taken out for the employee-sponsored health coverage. And again, you would enter a time card for non-taxable pay. Union ID, job ID should be empty. Phase ID should be empty. Day of the week is going to be N for non-taxable. The dates are going to be the date of the coverage. Just like the FFCRA time, the COVID time cards work. So if I were adding it, it would not have a union, it would have a non-taxable. my miscellaneous account, and my non-taxable pay. And if I want to, when I want to calculate, doesn't tell you to uncheck these, but you wouldn't want 401k or Section 125 to calculate on these. And you would want to do a paper check if you're using direct deposit. And they always give you this warning when you're creating paper checks if you normally have direct deposit. The next step is to edit check calculations and review void. Here's the T-check. And just like the deduction does not calculate on non-taxable time cards, which is the same way with the FFCRA, so you have to manually edit. You have to manually put in the dollar amount to make it a $0 check. And then you would print the checks using a fake check number like the date after you save this, just like you do for the COVID-19 wages. And then that will show when you go to print your W-2. You can print your W-2 forms to the screen or to paper if you want to see them. I'm not sure why that didn't show up. Probably because it's not posted to the employee file. I have to post first. I didn't actually print the checks, but it would show up on box 12 of his W-2. You can preview your W-2s this way after you're done with everything to make sure what they're going to look like. You can run the W-2 forms to the screen to make sure everything that's supposed to show up is showing up for you. When you print your W-2 forms, you should have printed a W-2 totals report, which is this report here. This report will show you your employees, the wages, the number of W-2s that you're going to need, the different tax amounts, your Social Security wages. Now this report will also show you if your state wages do not equal your federal wages. They won't equal if you work in multiple states. But if you only work in one state, they should equal. If they don't, then there's probably a problem with something, and you need to contact us. So this is a good report to preview. Make sure everything looks like it should. When you do go to print the W-2s, it's under here, W-2 forms. You do have to enter the Social Security limit, and which we've included in this letter. This is 2021 Social Security limit. So if you refer to this letter, you'll be able to see what this limit should be for 2021. Now, normally you would print for all employees. If you purchased forms from us, you get a pre-printed form, and you have like 6 copies of it maybe. A couple of which, one that stays with you, one that goes to the government if you don't file electronically. One that was supposed to be with the state, but the state doesn't require them anymore. And then 2 that would go to your employees, 2 or 3 copies. You could send 2 or 3 to them if you want. But you need to run this step multiple times in order to get the correct number of forms. And you'll have forms in your packet that you entered. It'll be copy A, copy B, copy C, and it'll tell you which form goes to what entity, if it's the employee or the federal government. We recommend that you print them to paper first, or at least a couple of them, to make sure that they're going to line up properly. So you can hold them up to the form, you can print them on paper, hold them up to the form, make sure all the boxes are going to line up properly. They should line up. We do testing here for that, and we try to make sure, but with different printers out there, the different printer drivers also can have an effect on how the printing hits the boxes. So with any pre-printed form, you want to make sure to print at least 1 or 2 of them to paper first to make sure they're going to line up. Because we do have some extra forms in case you run out, but I know most of you probably ordered just enough forms to use for the number of employees that you have to reply to. So if you print a whole batch of forms and they print wrong, or you put them in upside down, you're going to have to get more forms to replace them. So if they look good on paper and they look like they're going to line up, you want to make sure of how your printer is going to feed in the W-2s, whether you have to put them upside down, right side up, head down, head up. You should probably know that from printing your checks. If you need help trying to do an alignment for them, you can call support and we can help you do that. Like I said, you'll print them multiple times, once for each copy needed. You may also reprint the W-2 forms if you need to. So, for example, you sent out a form and in February, John Smith calls you and says, hey, I lost my W-2 or I never got it, or, can you give me a copy of it? You can go back and print them, reprint them at any time just by choosing the correct year from the year drop-down list. And if you have any questions or concerns while you're doing it, you can just contact us and we try to help you as well we can. For the 1095-C data entry, we kind of already went through this. It's on the employees' year-to-date totals. It's in both the current file and the history file. The 1095-C form here from the software prints from the history file. It's designed to print from the history file and not the current year file. So you see there is no current here. There's just the history files. So you cannot print it from the current. You have to have it printed from the history. Again, you can manually enter the information or you can import from this Excel file that we can send to you. There is in our README file, which you guys all have, and this is a link to it on our website. It will take you to our README that's on our website, and you can search for the employee provided health insurance coverage. Search for this wording here, and it will take you to the section that will explain further about how you need to do this. So if we follow that link, brings me to our website. And in the search, Well, I don't know why that didn't work. I will have to find out why that doesn't work. I thought we tried these links and they all worked, but apparently they don't. Under news here is the letter that I was talking about that I'm referring to, the year-end instructions. You can print this if you want to. It's the same letter that we're going over right now. It has all the information on it that we've been covering. Also on our website, the tax tables will be published out here when we have them available. We also will have our webinar posted on this website when it is available, and we will let you know. We will send out an email letting you know when it's available and where to find it. So this is the dialog for importing using the Excel worksheet. These 1094, 1095 forms print on paper. They do not have forms that you need to purchase. They just print on plain white 8.5 by 11 paper with black ink. Now the workbook that this references, some of you may be familiar with, is this master Excel book here. This is what it looks like. It has to be set up to read your data files. So the data connection has to be set up to read your company files if you don't already have this on your system. And then you would use this, the yellow highlights are the fields that you can fill in. And you click the Get Data, it will go out and pull in all the employees into a row that looks like this. Show you the hours that they actually worked for the different months. And then these yellow highlights are what's going to fill in, and these things here and in here. This file can then be imported. You can make changes on this once you've populated the data in here. You can go through it and make changes to it to adjust any hours or codes that you need to. And then use the instructions for importing. These are the due dates for W-2s. Paper forms are due to the employees by January 31st or due to the IRS by January 31st if you're doing paper, along with the W-3. The W-3 is a crystal report. The 1096 is a crystal report. We have those available for you, and if you do not have crystal reports or crystal reports viewer, contact support and we can work with you to get those printed. If you're filing electronically, you don't need a W-3 for the W-2s, and those are also due by January 31st. So your electronic file has to be uploaded by the end of January, and there's no W-3 needed with that. 1094, 1095s, paper forms to the employees by March 2nd. Paper forms to the IRS by February 28th, which is a little unusual for them to have two different dates like that, but that is what is listed on their website. And these links here are where we get this information from. You can go to these links and you can look up the information to verify. If you're filing the 1094, 1095 electronically, it has to be done by March 31st. So they do give you a little more time to do the electronic filing. Accounts payable 1099 NECs, which is the non-employee compensation, and then miscellaneous. Those paper forms are due by January 31st. To the IRS by the 31st, and also electronically by January 31st. 1099 miss forms have slightly different dates. Paper forms to the recipient is January 31st, to the IRS is the 28th, and electronically filed, if over 250, is by March 31st. So the government only requires you to file 1099s electronically if you have over 250 forms to file. Many of you will not. Most of you may not have. So that is basically the year end and procedures and what you need to do. Again, if you didn't get this letter or you didn't get notification of this letter, or you can access it on our website. And if you have trouble with our website or can't find it, just let us know. If you need help with the COVID wages, or you're not sure if you had COVID wages, or you need the crystal reports for COVID wages, we could get those for you. Just call support, and we will be more than happy to assist you with that. If you have any questions regarding any of this that we've covered today, or you need a refresher, you can email support@jobcost.com. And that concludes the webinar. Hopefully you found it helpful, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you guys at some point during year end. Thank you for attending, and I hope you have a good day.